Hello. Let's do some more repair, eh? So here I've got a Mesa Boogie Studio 22. It's part of the Caliber series. It's a combo 1x12. That's the back. It's got a reverb built in. That's that thing you can see bouncing around in there. And it's got two EL84 output tubes that go there. It's got 5 12AX7s. They're all 12AX7s. Yeah, 5 12AX7s. It has two channels controlled by a foot switch. They're not independent channels, they share the EQ. Pretty old amps. They started, I think, late 80s and ran for about 10 years, I believe. It's part of that series. There was a few different amps in it. There was one that had EQ. Instead of that logo, there was a little logo down there or something, and there was, I think it was 5-band graphic EQ. That was the Plus model. And you can see they've used the same chassis, because that's got the cutouts there for the sliders. It's got an effects loop and a recording out. Now this one's suffered at the hands of someone. Someone's done some repairs to it. Looks like a pretty long time ago though. So there's some heat damage to the board. These amps have a really weird bias circuit, and a lot of people don't understand how they work. I understand them just enough to make them not catch fire, so that's good. Mesa have a habit of reinventing the wheel and trying to patent it for their own nefarious means, and this is one of them. He's a bit of a patent troll. So yeah, I like this thing here. There's a big loop of wire there. It's like a little handle, but that's just connected to ground, so it's a really handy earthing point on the circuit board. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull the board out. I've already taken a few photos to just remember how to reconnect everything, because these circuit boards are pretty badly, like they're not very well marked. They don't put any markings on. There is a silk screen on the front, but they don't have stuff in plain English. Some of the connections don't have any markings at all, so you've got to trace them on the circuit. In the factory, they've probably just got a jig that they stick the wires through and then solder them off on one end, and don't have to think about it. But when you're working on it, repairing it, you do have to think about it. So I'm going to whack this board out, at least get it so it flips over 180 degrees to do a bit of repair, because we've got some destroyed traces which I think are a bit too far gone, and there's too much other stuff next to them to be able to just do the Hot Rod Deluxe trick of just creating tracks underneath with long component leads. That's what they have done here. But we've got traces lifting off the board there. I don't know. I just want to have a bit more mechanical support there, so I'm going to chuck some turrets through the board, 2mm turrets, and hopefully that will take the strain. This thing did come in running, so I put it on the load and checked everything. I think it was a while back I checked it now. We've been waiting for parts to come in and just doing other things. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I had it up and running. I've probably got notes written down somewhere, and there was no like evidence of bias runaway or anything. I had it on for a good hour or two, I think, and I was worried that the board might have become conductive from too much heat, but it looks like we might be in the clear for that. These boards do look pretty terrible, but you can often save them. Just take those high voltage wires out. That's the power supply area. I'm going to do a recap on this because the capacitors are all original. And like I say, this thing's older, well, probably as old as I am. Did I spot a date? 80 something. I don't know, can't read the handwriting. Yeah, it's probably mid to late 80s. And I'm only 35, so it's probably as old as I am. Only 35. There we go. We'll flip the board over. You can see all the horror. So I'll just pop that bit of wood out and get a good look at the circuit board top side. About the centre there. There we go. Right, so there's not a lot to this amp. It's pretty simple. You can see all the area down here that's not populated. That's where the graphic EQ circuitry goes. You've got Vactrols over here, Vactrol Forest. That's the foot switching area. They're basically like little soft acting relays. They've got a LED on one side and a photo cell on the other. And if you don't know what they do, look it up. So I'm going to replace that, and this one because it's sitting on a weird angle, and that's where the circuit board damage is. These are pretty heavy, so when they're rocking around, particularly in a combo amp, they can damage the circuit board and lose connection. That there is a dropper for the foot switching circuit. In the other, the Plus model, that area of the power supply also powers the low voltage solid state graphic EQ circuit. You've got, that's the bias cap there, 220 mic, chuck one of them back in. So yeah, I'll be doing that, and that. I'm going to change the screen grids. Now, this thing looks like it's been cooking. So another little thing I do to calm down the bias a bit, or it contributes to calming down the bias, is change the screen grid, I guess stoppers, screen grid resistors. They're currently 470 ohm. Change them to 1K, and that'll cool everything down a bit as well. I've got a feeling that the bias is gonna need a bit of tweaking with some new tubes. So I might just off the bat try and adjust it and see if we can get in the ballpark first go. I doubt it. I highly doubt it, but we'll give it a go. Alright, so let's test a couple of these carbon comps because they're known to drift pretty heavily. Get the fruit. We got yeah, we're good. Put that down here. You can see that, eh? Right, so they're supposed to be 470 ohm. That's not bad, that's within tolerance. That's at room temperature though. 480, that's pretty good. Carbon comps, they do break down though, and they sometimes literally fall apart. What have we got there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're the heater balances here. Should be about 100 ohm. 96. 103, close enough. I might replace them anyway, just because it's fun. What do we got? That looks like a dropper. 68. Oh, it's got a cap on it. 86. No. It's got a cap on it as well. You can see the value going up. as it charges. Now these use, instead of your traditional amps, where they use electrolytic bypass caps, everything in this series, in fact I think most Mesa Boogies use tantalum caps. So you find that's one there, one there, tiny little things, but they've got pretty high value. There's one hidden down behind there, there's one there. So they don't age like electrolytics per se. The jury's out on whether they're really good for bypass caps, but I don't know. Mesa have them, use them with no real problems. If they're not bad, they're not bad, so I might just leave them in, see how we go, because it was sounding pretty good. It just was intermittent when it came in. Yeah. So there's also a problem, which is probably the main reason it came in, but there are other issues as well. It's got the problem that I don't have enough room on my bench. So yeah, down here the effects loop jack, which is down here. So that's your send, that's your return, send return. One of them, when the amp warms up, is losing contact and the signal's cutting out, sounding very distorted and very low signal. And I found that by tapping around in this area and just moving the leads and stuff around, it sort of died back in and back out. And when I plugged in a link lead here, like a little patch lead that you put between pedals, the problem went away. So I think that's the shorting jack is starting to lose contact of its shorting contacts. So I'll probably just replace the jack. You could clean it, but the jack's like a couple of bucks. I'll just replace it with a new one, eh? Yeah, and that'll probably solve that problem. And then we just got to keep the bias and everything under control and just mitigate heat damage. Well, that's already occurred. So we'll give it a full-on service. So I've got the parts here I'm putting in, going Nichicon again. That's the 33 mic 450 volt. There were 30 microfarad in there, but we're talking even the best of the best electrolytic capacitors are like minus 20 plus 50%. The tolerance is massive, so 33 no different. You could probably even go up another actual value and like 47, and you probably still would barely notice. I've got axials for everything. That's the 470. On here it shows a 680 microfarad. Now that I believe was on the plus model, where this area of the power supply had to supply the solid state circuitry for the graphic EQ as well. So that's probably a bit of an overkill. And then the schematic I found shows that as 470. So I think 470 would be adequate. We'll chuck it in. And if it hums, we'll deal with it then, but I doubt it will. And the 220 looks almost identical to the 470. 220 microfarad, 63 volt for the bias supply. And that's another Nichicon. We've got two, I'm not sure of the brand, I think they were Vichy, maybe not though. 1K 5 watt for the screen resistor. Two of them for the two valves. It's those two there. And I'm going to replace this one. That's a 560R, but also found other schematics where in later revisions they changed that to a 1K resistor. So I might try that out as well. And doing a bit of research. It's like they got it in the ballpark for the first revision, then played with it later on. Possibly for issues, possibly because of the part availability, and it doesn't matter. So anyway, I might have a quick look at the schematic with you, if I can find it. There it is. Alright, let's have a look. So there we go. That's the graphic EQ, which we don't have to worry about because it's not on this model. Let's go to the second page where the power supply is. Rightio. So the schematic's a bit funny. I thought when I first started looking at these schematics, I thought they were hand drawn by someone reverse engineering them, but it looks like, because they all look the same, looks like they're actually Mesa stuff. I wouldn't put it past Mesa, because they seem to be back in yesterday in terms of technology. What is that? So, as usual, we've got the mains coming in here. Got a ground switch with a what we call a death cap, which is no good, but it's illegal in Australia, so they didn't send them to Australia with that. There's just a hole there where there's nothing installed. Got your power switch there that turns on the primary. This one is shown wide in parallel, so that's for 110 volts. Or 100, whatever that says, 15. And it's showing here that you would want to wire them up in series for 200, well, it says 230 volts. And then it's a different, I think it's probably a different transformer, but it shows just one winding hooked up for 100 volts, which is Japanese. And yeah, the fuse rating goes up somewhat. So, because you've got twice the voltage, you've got half the current for the same amount of power, so you've got a half amp fuse for Europe and Australia. And you've got a 1.25 for the US. And I don't know, who else uses 110 volt, 115 volt? Anyway, so here's the high voltage windings. That's one end, that's the other end, that's the center tap. And there's another tap here going off and it says blue. So let's focus on the high voltage first. These points here, these schematics are a bit hard to read because you've got points that appear elsewhere. So that's red or R1 and R2, or R1, R2. You can barely read it, but they link up to over here, and that's your main diodes. That's the the main high voltage input. That's your standby switch to turn the high voltage on to the rest of the amp. That's your first capacitor. That's your first node that goes off to your power, your center tap for your plate supply. Your center tap on your output transformer. I love talking on video. That's your first dropper. And that goes off to the next node, which has got another filter cap there, and that's your screen grid node that comes in down here. And I believe that's also used for the reverb drive transformer. Let's have a look at the first page again. Yeah, there it is there, B. Hard to read, 235, 295, something like that. And that connects to the plate of the reverb driver. Now everything on these schematics is drawn back to front. Normally the input's on the left and the output's on the right. For Mesa, for some reason, the input's on the right, the output's on the left. Maybe the schematic drawer was Arabic or something and they do everything right to left, I don't know. But you can see there's the main input. And it goes from right to left, which screws you up the first time you look at it. For a second anyway, if you know what you're doing. So anyway, that's a Class A, or a single-ended Class A, well, basically a power amplifier. And this is like a mini valve amp right here, output stage, and then that's your output. You can actually hook up a speaker to the reverb send, and it acts like a little 1 watt amp, which is pretty cool, but you've got to have something plugged into your main output too, otherwise you blow it up. But yeah, I've heard about people using that for recording. They'll use the reverb send as the output and plug a speaker cabinet into it, because these reverb tanks are generally nominally 8 ohm input impedance, so that'd be an 8 ohm wind for the output there, so you can plug an 8 ohm speaker into it. And yeah, that's your send for your reverb tank, which is that inside the chassis I showed you before. That's your input, comes into the grid of the recovery, and then it goes through. You got a cap here to stop, well, treble or possibly oscillation. Be a very high impedance input there, and then that goes back into the preamp. So anyway, we got sidetracked, back to the power supply. There's your third node there, ABC. That's your lowest voltage one, that goes off to all the preamp tubes. And there's your filter caps. 3 of 30 microfarad, 450 volt. So I'm putting in 33 microfarad, 450 volt. So back to the main outputs. You got your heaters down there, but boring. That's your heater wind. That's showing your preamp tubes. That's showing your output tubes. I should say valves. Been talking to two new Americans again. There's your 100 ohm balancing resistors, which give the heaters a reference to ground and a lower noise. Basically balances out the noise thrown back into the transformer by the rectifier's switching. Yeah, there's other reasons as well, but it also just makes sure instead of it being off balance, that the heater windings, well, the heater supply cables, you twist them together and then it's like a differential signal going through it, which radiates less noise. But yeah, there's a lot of theory behind that. Sure. So anyway, here's your negative supplies. Now, the foot switch supply, I don't know why they chose to do this, but probably just because it's easier and less components, because you can tap it off the same sort of area as the bias supply. But they've run the foot switch supply as, well, a positive ground, I guess you'd call it. It's using negative voltage as the drive signal. I don't know, how do you explain it? It's using a negative voltage as the control voltage for the foot switch. So it's deriving both that and the bias off the same circuit. So this is taking the full high tension out. You got your rectifier here, a half wave. You got to drop a resistor there. It's a really weird circuit, and this is part of the reason why these amps have issues. Instead of having a basic voltage divider, they've got this capacitor coupled power supply basically, and it's sort of unstable. So here's that's your negative supply that goes up to, oh sorry, no, that's positive. Yeah, so it's a negative supply, but then it gets dragged towards the positive. The F goes over here, that's the F. And that powers that gives a bias to the phase inverter. But that's linked by a 33k resistor to the bias supply for the output tubes. Now that's pretty sketchy to do, because there it comes in there, you can see the minus 15. D goes from there over to here. F goes from there to there. So that should be 2 volts. That should be minus 15. But what I've found is these two voltages, it's like a seesaw. If one of them's too high, it drags the other one with it. And if you want to make this one lower, it drags that one with it too. So it's hard to get both of them bang on what they should be. And particularly if you change the valves, you can end up with the bias going out. Now I screwed around with one of these circuits for bloody days trying to get a nice balance, something that was foolproof. The amp at the time had a lot of damage to the area, so that made it difficult as well. I was rebuilding parts of the board basically, but I found that changing this resistor here, the 33k, sorry, the other way around, changing this resistor here, the 15k, affected the bias as well as changing that 33k. So I was trying to get good voltage there and good voltage there, and it was sort of hit and miss affair. I ended up just substituting bits and pieces in until they worked. Got there in the end, but it wasn't fun. And it's not really a textbook circuit. I don't know. No one can really tell me why they've chosen to do this. It seems really stupid when you can just have a long tail pair, which everyone else does, and it's super stable. You can't really screw it up. And then you've got one less power supply coming off here, Yeah, I don't know why they've done it. It doesn't really save any money. It certainly doesn't make it more reliable. Maybe it is because they want their secret herb and spice on it, so you've got to take it back to Mesa to fix up. But anyway, so on with the power supplies. Up here you can see it takes the blue tap, which is down here, probably, I don't know, 20, I think it was 24 volts from memory, the last one. It's a little tap there, and you can see it's deriving, sorry, I've screwed you up before, that's the EQ supply. So the EQ is negative, foot switch is positive. See the direction of the diode? So that's giving a positive voltage here. I think it was around the 10 volt, oh yeah, 10 volt, there you go, 10 volt mark. And that was about minus 13 to 12 volts, I believe. But this one doesn't have that section because it's not the EQ model. So everything below there, it doesn't exist in this one. That's just the foot switch. And some of this is different too. It says EQ in and out. That's not on this because it doesn't have the graphic. So it's a bit simpler, this one, so it's good. Even an idiot like me should be able to figure it out. So from the input, go straight in, you hit the LDR, which is the Vactrol controlled by the foot switch. They've drawn it as a switch, but in reality that's actually a resistor, and it changes resistance when exposed to light. And the LDR, well, that's the LDR, the light dependent resistor, and this here is just an average LED. Now they're in the same casing, so when the LED emits light, when it gets current across it, it makes the resistance drop, so it's like closing a switch. And then the signal gets put through this tube. I'm guessing, so that's the lead, and then I believe it switches that one at the same time. So the input and the output get switched on to that stage. So it basically cascades another stage, which gives you more distortion. It comes to another stage here. Sorry, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold. I'm getting over it. It goes through this stage, another gain stage, through the EQ, through into another gain stage to recover a bit of gain after the EQ. And yeah, just cascade it again and again and again. There's no cathode followers on this one, which is interesting. That's probably why it sounds so old school. It doesn't have that modern distortion sound. It's got that 70s, 80s distortion sound. And then it goes through the effects loop, which is I think they've screwed up these labels. So it should say send return because it's coming from the plate. That's your send. Is it? Let me think about this. What if it's shorted? It doesn't. No, if it's shorted, yeah, no, this is right. Send, you plug in there, you can still send your signal out. It's only when you plug it in to the return that it breaks the chain. Yeah, so theoretically, if you got a problem with one of these amps, you could plug a signal generator into the return, which you can with most amps. Plug a signal generator into the return and you can figure out if the problem's before or after that point. So anyway, comes out here. That's switchable attenuator. So I'd say that is to pull the gain, probably to drop the signal there a little bit. I don't know if there's a boost on here or something. I'd have to look at what the LDRs do, but it comes out the master. And then goes to EQ normally, but we don't have EQ. It would come in right about there. And then it finds its way to the power amp. Anyway, let's get back to the dirty work, eh? So, let's pull some components. got a resistor on the back there. Not sure exactly what that was for. Probably just doesn't look like the original one. He's probably replaced it because it's not a carbon comp or a carbon film that looks like these ones. He's probably just put it back on that side because it's easier. I'll put that back where it should be in the process. So I'll do what I did last time, and I'm going to snip out the caps before desoldering their leads. Just makes you less likely to screw something up that way. So they're supposedly Mesa. They're not really. Mesa don't make caps. They look like Spragues. Or Sprague, as the US call it, eh? Made in the USA. Sprague capacitor. How come Aussies can copy American accents, but Americans can't copy Aussie accents? Bucket of shame. That's the 560 ohm. You can see that's been heating up the board like crazy too. See that? Ugh, toasty. Well, that's where I think I might put the turrets. So I might snip out those. Don't know how fun this is going to be to watch, but anyway. I like to watch. Yeah, that trace is buggered. Just non-existent. Very hot in that area. This track's non-existent. Yeah, it is. It's just hanging off. Like I said in the last video, the copper traces, they're only held on by a glue, and the glue can let go if it gets overheated. And goodbye trace. So I want to stick two turrets there. Now turrets are little pin things that they're like rivets. Just get out the parts. There's 2mm and 3mm ones. I want 2mm because it's a circuit board, not a turret board. Turret boards are thicker. That's what I want. There's a little tool to go with it. Peen them over like a rivet. I've got a drill bit in there too, I think. No. So, get my calipers. Can't remember the exact size of the required drill, but pretty sure it was Imperial though. 2.6. Let's add an inch. 7/64, that rings a bell. Oh, it's 2.8. That's 2.35. Maybe it is metric. Fibre. That'll be close. Give it a jiggle, it'll work. This is where it gets scary, look away. Oh man, that dust just, that board's just falling apart. That's bad. It'd almost be good if someone made replacement boards for these things. They're this prone to failure. They're all going the way of the dodo. Oh, you bastard. Hole's still a bit tight. It's like I need a 2.6mm drill bit, but I don't have one. If you drill it too big, the turret just won't tighten up when you pin it over, and that sucks too. Alright, so I need a little hammer, and this is where I wish I had 3 arms. So I've got my 2 little hammers here, copper face, and don't do that with hardened hammers. But it's not hardened because it's copper. Use that as my dolly, and that is my swing press. That'll do. That's what AVE called it. Just try and sit that down there somewhere comfortable. Get the little peening tool, which is basically just got a little pin in the middle and a shoulder on it. Try and disturb the reverb in the process, which I've left in. Probably should take it out actually. Yeah, I think I might. Let's not tempt fate. Nah, it's too hard. Video. Kind of like doing these videos because it shows how stupid and fiddly a lot of this shit is. It's painful, man. If you're smart, don't fix amps. Go be an investment banker or something boring like that. Oh, this is terrible. Need something better. How about that, eh? About 2 kilograms of stainless. That'll do. Fuck yeah. Oh, dropped it. One turret done. Don't mind me just missing and hitting that resistor there. Two turrets installed to take that resistor. Now I'll need one for that diode. There's no way of seeing how it goes, so I might just draw on there with a pen. Can't find a pen because the video's running. It's always the way. Let's take a quick photo. That'll do. Piss that diode off. Its pads and traces are screwed too, so another turret going in there, and we'll run a wire to its other end. I don't like the idea of just running a wire and soldering it to the face of the trace. It just goes to like a via thing anyway, so I'll just pop a wire in that hole. Problem solved. Shouldn't breathe that shit in either. But what's a hole between mates? That came out wrong. Right, one more turret, or two more turrets. We'll start running some wires. Some wires. Awesome, I didn't miss that time. Makes me look professional when I don't miss. Another turret, or turret as they say in French. Not really. Sweet as. You You know what? Nah, that'll be alright. That'll be alright. Don't worry about it. Let's get a razor blade. Cut off the see if what you can see here. Getting too far into the repair and not paying attention to the video as usual. That's better, isn't it? I'll cut that trace. I'll take the remainder of the copper track off, and what we'll do when we put that component in, we'll just bend the lead from it out and put it into that turret there. Now we've repaired the board, and we've also removed any further heat damage because we've lifted the heat generating components off the circuit board, which is what they should have done in the first place. But Mesa. It's had a pretty good run. Can't design them to last forever. You won't sell any more fucking amps, eh? So, C9. Let's put that in. That was the... C9 was the 470 microfarad. It says 16 volts, but I think I've got a... What have I got? 35. It's alright. Same size as the old one. Anyway, I'll just show you what I've done. Where those traces were destroyed, oh, get rid of my big bastard weight. Where those traces were destroyed, I've mounted turrets to mount the components to. That's them there for R131 and D something or other. Can't read the writing. So I'll mount the components to them. We don't have to worry about our circuit board being damaged anymore. So there you go. Put that R115 on the other side. What is that? It's coming from... this resistor here. It's supposed to be R115. So look at the schematic. R115. And there it is there, 350. That looks like a 330 ohm. That's probably a 3. It's hard to tell with this shitty photocopy. So that resistor's probably fine. I don't know if this is a mod or a revision though. But all I've got to go off is what's in it and what's on the schematic. I could look at another schematic, but I'll do that later. So let's put a bloody capacitor in it and we'll go from there. Can't sit here staring at it, eh? We've got to get some shit done. So, because I'm flipping the board back and forth so many friggin' times, I'm gonna go through and check all the wiring that's still connected because I've probably damaged some of the joints. That's alright, it's just wire. Don't worry about it. Caps don't generate heat, so I'll knock that one right down on the board. Probably should put some silicone on it. Yeah, why not? I'll twist my arm. Let's be paranoid. Actually, I'll take that old silicone off while I'm here. With my chisel. Never cut towards yourself, alright? What a fucking joke. If you couldn't cut towards yourself, you'd never get anything done. Just don't be a dickhead with a chisel. Get rid of some 30-year-old silicon. Put on some 1-year-old silicon. Bugger all, like just a little smidgen. That's not a word. That just stops the component from vibrating around during maximum rock. And I'll pop that wire because that now is our trace. You sort of see that, eh? Cut off a bit of excess. Put a little bend in it. Stick her in the turret. And that's our trace. So in the top, R131, which is the 1K 5 watt. It says 2 watt on the schematic, but look at the board. Doesn't get that black from 2 watts. We'll just dead set mount it in the turret like that, so it's up in mid-air. Bend her over underneath. Now I'll just solder in that one side to lock everything in. Solder both sides of the cap. Sweet as. Sweet as. I'll just solder this one turret for now. Turret soak up a bit of heat and a bit of solder. That's good. Cut the excess lead off. Leave a little bit there for mechanical support. Alright, so now what I want to do might be hard for you to really see. Now you can see that. Yeah. Bloody schmicko camera. So, that's the bottom of the turrets where I've riveted them over. That's the capacitor under here. That's the resistor under there, and that's going to be the diode under there. Now this is what they call a ground plane, or it can be an anything plane, but in this case it's a ground plane that's got ground on it, 0 volts. These don't have 0 volts on them. And see how close they are there? Around the corners, that little bit there. So that's probably not touching, but I don't like how close it is, so I'm going to just slice out a little bit of excess clearance. If you just cut through the copper, you can just lift off that little section. Oh, look at the zoom on my camera. I can't even see what I'm doing, but you guys can. Can you tell me where I'm cutting? To the left, to the right? Chisel again. He says you can't use woodworking tools on amps. Fucking butcher I am. So there we go, a bit more clearance. Looks terrible there, but that's just because it's got goo on it. So I'll flux rather. Clean a bit off and it'll look a bit better. Come on, alcohol. you can see there, it's just got a bit of extra clearance. It's only low voltage. It's like, what, 10 volts something. So, near enough's good enough. Same goes for this one. When a board's this damaged, you kind of got to think outside the box just to get anything done. You could go, oh no, I can't do that, I can't do this, can't do that. You just got to try and think of a way that everything's mechanically supported, nothing overheats anymore, everything works and everything's reliable. Sometimes you can't do that and it's a bin job, or you got to replace the whole circuit board, and that sucks, but it happens. In this case, I think we'll be right. If we're not right, it's off my back and not the customer's. Yay! Right, so same goes here. We'll create a trace, because there used to be a trace across here with the excess lead from the resistor on the other side of the board. Looks a bit pro. And we'll solder. Let's solder from the top this time. Looks neater with the finished product. Although maybe it doesn't, because the board is upside down. Bit of zoom yous out, eh? Like I was saying, these turrets soak up a fair bit of heat before they start wicking solder. So you got to watch yourself when you're doing film capacitors. You got to put heat sinks on them, otherwise you can destroy them. They don't like heat. But here I'm soldering a power resistor and they're born for heat. They're moulded by it. Alright, grab a diode. It's nothing fancy diode. I think it's a, oh shit, it's a 1 and 4 friggin' whatever, 4004 would work. I think they're 4006. You can't really read it, but massive overkill. 4006. What's that? That's 600 volts. I don't know. Anyway, massive. So using a 4. I think I've got a million 4007s. I'll just use that. The same size package anyway. So I'll grab one of them, wherever the hell I put them. Oh, there we go. Lots of drugs. 1 and 4007. Pop one of them through. Now it said plus on that side, but that means cathode. Put a bit of excess lead length on this one just because I don't want to overheat it too much when I'm soldering it. I'll leave that one for a sec. I've got to connect the wire up to it. Grab a bit of wire. Strip the end. Nope, nicked it. Twist the end. Tin the end. Bit of blue tack, hold it in place while I tin it. You've got to tin the wire. Don't try not to. Stick her in. That'll be our new trace. Let's just jack the temp up a bit. With turrets, it's kind of good to get in there pretty hot and get out as quick as you can. Just zoom in a bit here so you can see what I'm up to. Got this new camera mount on the bench, but it's alright. I think it's meant for permanent positioning though, not adjustment. Those turrets stay hot for a while too. Pull away with the wire and it still comes out when you think it would have been set. Cut the excess component leads off. There's a new trace. It runs over here. Suck the solder out of that. That's what they call a via. So it's a hole without a component in it, but what it does have in it is solder, because it's plated through, and that makes a connection from one side of the board to the other. In the days before through plated holes, that had to be a wire going from place to place. It wasn't real effective or pretty. Now they're on everything. All of these little holes, they're just through plated. No components in them. Still got a blob of solder on the other side, stopping the wire from going in. There we go. Not super pretty, but it's effective and reliable. And that's the name of the game. I'll probably stick that down on the board with some silicone overnight. Some little blobs there once I've finished everything else. So where was I? Oh yeah, solder the diode on. That's the area I'm working on. Solder everywhere. These some of these turrets can be a bit hard to tin. Here I'm just heating the outside of the turret and then feeding solder to the inside. Run out of room otherwise. We're there. Get the caps ready. That cools down a bit. I think I've said in the other videos I like mounting the caps with the values facing up. So I can see them next time. Alright, pull these cap wires out. Put a bit of fresh solder on there. Pull out the old leads. Straight onto the ground to clean up later. Suck out the excess salt air. Yep. Sweet as, bro. She's sweet as. Put some silicone on the bottom of these caps as well. These are the heaviest, so we want to put them on these ones. That way. That way. Just a smidge. Next. Sticker in. It's supposed to help someone move in about 15 minutes. Probably should be on my way already. Oh well. That's the joys of owning a van. You've got to help everyone move. Isn't that right, Matty? Some new capacitors. installed it. Got one more over the other side. This used to be here, you can see 53. Yeah, it's part of the power supply, but let's chuck it on the other end of the board, eh? These are pretty noisy amps, even when they're going really good, through various strange decisions made by Mesa. Can only really get the noise floor so low without rebuilding the things from scratch. And that way, the other way, of course. Just solder, stopping me from putting them in the hole. So that's interesting. I've just spotted, yeah, I've put silicon on the friggin' cap. I just spotted this component here. I'll see if I can zoom in without it being the end of the world. Might be hard for you to make out, particularly on the live feed, but have a look in the high def video on YouTube. There's a little ring around that lead. Where's my friggin' tweezers? There we go. Little ring around that lead. Yeah, focus. Right there. I can get my tweezers in there. It's probably a dry solder joint, and that might have been another reason why it was dropping out, because that's a big dropper resistor. You'd lose high voltage to various parts of the circuit if that lost connection, and the other side of the board doesn't look too crash hot either in that area. So I might, let's see if we can zoom in on that too. Left, your other left. Oh yeah, this thing ain't great. So yeah, there's looks like a little crack across there too. So I reckon that's probably when it heats up, because it's right next to this output valve. That would be a pretty hot area. Yeah, let's put our main filter cap, our reservoir cap, right next to the dropper and the output valve. Silly boys. It's okay because I got a patent. Anyway, I might reinforce that somehow. Don't really want to run a new line just for that. I might create like a little standoff with the component lead and maybe put a little link wire there. Something messy and unprofessional, no doubt. Anyway, for the meantime, let's just do this cap. Oh my god. Yeah, you can see my guts now. I'll suck them in, hang on. There we go. Where were we? Capacitor. I've already put silicon on it, so I'll try not to get it everywhere. Still a bit of solder in that hole. Oh, he does, bro. There we go. Alright, solder them down. Then I better head off. Unfortunately, I'll come back tomorrow and do some more. Or get it finished tomorrow. I might actually do an edited video this time. Get rid of most of the waffling. So yeah, I'll come back, probably see you sometime tomorrow, and we'll do some more work. Take it easy.